Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something pretty groundbreaking. We're talking about large language models, LLMs, and handling context lengths of millions of tokens.
Millions.
Yeah, just imagine being able to analyze like a whole code repository
Wow.
or summarizing a mountain of documents all at once. That's the kind of power we're talking about here.
It's pretty incredible.
But, there's got to be a catch, right?
Well, yeah, there is. Processing that much information, it can be really slow and resource intensive.
For sure.
But thankfully, the brilliant minds over at NVIDIA might have a solution.
Okay, tell me more.
They call it star attention. And, well, we're going to unpack exactly how it works.
All right, so I got to ask, how does it actually work? I'm picturing something incredibly complex.
It's clever, but the core concept is pretty elegant, I think. Star attention is a two-phase approach. And it kind of splits the task of understanding those long sequences into more of a local and global focus.
So is that kind of like when you're reading a book, you're focusing on the words in each sentence, but you're also keeping the overall story in mind?
Exactly. You got it. Star attention does something very similar.
So walk me through how these phases actually play out.
Right. So in phase one, we call it context encoding. The text is divided into these blocks, and then they're distributed across multiple context hosts. Think of them like different processors all working in parallel.
Oh, yeah?
Each host then focuses on understanding its assigned block of text and computes something called self-attention locally.
That makes sense, but doesn't that kind of risk losing the overall context? How does it connect the different parts?
That is a great question, and that's where something called the anchor block comes in. So every host also receives a copy of the first block of text, and it acts as a shared reference point.
I see.
It's like, think of it like a table of contents in a book. It helps you keep track of the main point. The anchor block does the same thing, ensuring the model doesn't get lost in the details and still understands the broader context.
So it's kind of like setting the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what about phase two? What happens then?
Phase two is where the magic happens. It's called query encoding and token generation. And this is where the query, which is basically the question or prompt you give the LLM, it's sent out to all those hosts.
Okay.
And then they use their local knowledge from phase one, along with that anchor block, to answer the query.
So it's like each host is an expert on its own section, and they all contribute to answer the big question.
Yeah. And a designated query host then gathers all those responses and uses them to generate the next token, the next word or piece of code in the sequence. And this process continues until the whole query is answered.
That seems way more efficient than trying to process everything globally all the time.
It really is. And the results from NVIDIA's experiments are really promising. They tested star attention on these popular benchmarks like Ruler and Babylon, and they even use a massive 70B parameter model. Wow. And get this, they achieved up to 11 times faster inference compared to some of the existing methods.
11 times. That's incredible. But what about accuracy? Did all this faster processing mean they sacrificed understanding the text correctly?
That's the best part. Despite these huge speed improvements, star attention consistently kept 95–100% of the accuracy of traditional global attention.
So they're basically getting the best of both worlds, speed and accuracy.
It seems like it. Now, I should say it's not a perfect solution. The researchers found there is a trade-off between accuracy and speed when you're determining the block size. How much text each host processes. They found that setting the block size to about 1/4 of the total sequence length, that usually gives a good balance. Larger blocks mean a bit higher accuracy, but can be slower.
So there's some fine-tuning involved, depending on the specific task.
Exactly. And that led the researchers to look even closer at the role of that anchor block. They did these fascinating experiments to see if the anchor block's position in the text mattered. And turns out the position isn't as important as the content.
Really? So it's not just a marker, it's more like a summary.
That's what the results are suggesting. They tested different anchor block configurations, and the model performed the best when the anchor block had the original content of the first block. Like, it needs that initial snapshot of the text to really understand everything.
So it's like setting the stage for the whole analysis.
Exactly. They even tested different sizes for the anchor block, and this is where it gets really interesting. They saw that a larger anchor block size actually led to better overall accuracy, even though most of the attention was focused at the beginning.
So maybe it's doing more than just managing the attention. Maybe it's playing a bigger role in capturing the essence of the whole context.
That's a great point. There's clearly more to uncover about how that anchor block contributes to star attention's success. The researchers themselves say that further exploration of this anchor block mechanism could lead to even better performance in the future.
Well, this is also fascinating. Star attention seems like a really promising approach to unlocking the potential of LLMs for handling these massive amounts of information. But it sounds like there's still a lot more to explore.
Absolutely. This is really just the beginning. It opens up a whole new path for optimizing LLMs and expanding their capabilities.
Well, before we get too carried away with the future, I think it's time to take a closer look at some of the specifics of the experiments. The paper goes into a lot of detail about the different benchmarks they used and the results they got.
Yes, let's dive into those details next. Understanding how star attention performed in different scenarios will give us a much clearer picture of its strengths and limitations. And that'll help us appreciate just how big of an impact this technology could have on various fields. Let's take a closer look at the Ruler benchmark. It's detailed in Appendix B. This benchmark, well, it's designed to test how well an LLM can handle a variety of complex tasks.
So it sounds like they really put these models through the ringer.
Oh, absolutely. They evaluate things like comprehension, reasoning, even retrieval capabilities. Table 4 actually gives a really helpful breakdown of the different tasks in Ruler,
Yeah.
and we can see how they differ in terms of the type of information the models are working with, how many pieces of information they need to process, and the kind of output they're expected to produce.
So it's not just about finding one single answer. It's more about understanding the relationships between different pieces of information and then using that understanding to complete a task.
Precisely. And then you have tasks like single NIH and multi-NIH, and these specifically test the model's ability to retrieve a very specific piece of information from a huge context.
Like finding a needle in a haystack.
Exactly. And then you have other tasks like multi-hop tracing, where the model actually needs to follow a chain of reasoning across multiple pieces of information.
It's like solving a puzzle by connecting the dots.
Exactly. And then we also have aggregation tasks, and these require the model to summarize or extract key information from a large chunk of text.
These are important for things like document summarization, right? And information retrieval.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about question answering tasks.
Essential for things like chatbots and virtual assistants.
Absolutely. So Ruler provides a very thorough evaluation covering a wide range of tasks and complexities.
It sounds very comprehensive.
It is. And in addition to Ruler, they also tested star attention on the Babylon benchmark that's also described in Appendix B.
Oh, interesting.
And this one, it focuses specifically on long context reasoning, really pushing the limits. Table 5 actually shows just how complex Babylon is. Some tasks involve multiple pieces of supporting information and these complex relationships between them.
Okay, so now we have a good understanding of how they tested star attention. So let's get into the actual algorithm itself. Appendix A breaks it down in detail using pseudocode.
Yes. Algorithm 1 walks us through phase 1, context encoding. This is where they take that long sequence of text and divide it into blocks, each one prefixed with an anchor block.
So they're basically breaking down the problem into smaller, bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. And within each block, they calculate local attention. This is much less computationally expensive than global attention.
Makes sense.
And this is the key to achieving that linear scaling with context length. As the text gets longer, the processing time increases much more slowly.
So phase 1 is all about efficiently processing these smaller chunks of text. So then what happens in phase 2?
Algorithm 2 details phase 2, which is query encoding and token generation. This is where they process the query, or the prompt, and the model generates the next token in the sequence.
But remember, we're working with a distributed system here where the text is split across multiple hosts.
Right, and that's where the distributed softmax algorithm comes in. This algorithm lets the hosts efficiently combine their local knowledge without having to transfer massive amounts of data between them.
So each host contributes its own little piece of the puzzle, and then they all work together to form the complete picture.
Precisely. And the query host, well, it's responsible for gathering all those responses and generating the next token. And this process repeats, until the entire query is answered or the task is complete.
So fascinating how they design these algorithms.
Now, to understand the performance benefits of star attention, we need to look at the experimental setup. That's all detailed in Appendix C.
And this appendix provides valuable information for anyone who wants to reproduce this research or build upon it.
Absolutely. And it starts by explaining why they chose ring attention as the baseline for comparison. See, traditional global attention methods just can't handle sequence lengths over a million
And
tokens.
Table 6 really highlights this. It clearly shows the processing time for vanilla autoregressive generation, ring attention, and star attention. And you can see how star attention just significantly outperforms both of the other methods, especially when you're dealing with those really long sequences.
It really demonstrates the efficiency gains they achieved.
Appendix C also details the hardware used for those measurements, which is great for transparency and reproducibility.
Definitely. And Table 7 outlines the number of GPUs and parallel workers they used for each model size and sequence length.
So this gives us a good understanding of the computational resources needed for this approach.
For sure. And for those interested in the specifics of the prompts used, Appendix C provides the templates for both base and instruct models. It shows how they structured the context and query for processing with star attention.
It's great that they included all of this detail.
Yes, it shows our commitment to open science. Now let's move on to Appendix D, which provides more insight into the accuracy of star attention.
Okay.
Table 8 presents the exact accuracy scores for both star attention and global attention on the ruler and Babylon benchmarks.
So we can directly compare the performance of the two methods across different sequence lengths and model sizes.
And as you can see, star attention consistently maintains high accuracy, even when it's processing those incredibly long sequences.
It's really impressive.
It really speaks to the effectiveness of that block-sparse attention mechanism and the strategic use of anchor blocks.
And to really complete the picture, Appendix E shows the accuracy scores for all the models they evaluated across all 13 tasks in the ruler benchmark.
Yes, tables 9 through 18 provide a very comprehensive overview of the performance of star attention and global attention across a wide range of scenarios.
And Figure 8 provides a nice visual summary of those results. You can really see the robustness of star attention across different sequence lengths.
These appendices offer a wealth of information for anyone interested in the technical details.
They really complement the main findings of the paper.
Definitely. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We have, delving into the intricacies of star attention and its performance on those really challenging benchmarks.
And it's clear that this research represents a significant step forward in the field of LLMs.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, though, let's take a moment to appreciate the research paper itself. Star attention. Efficient LLM inference over long sequences is very well written, very comprehensive. It clearly lays out the motivation, the methodology, and the results of this work.
It's a real testament to the hard work and dedication of the researchers over at NVIDIA.
It's a valuable resource for anyone who wants to learn more about this approach to long context processing.
And it's a fantastic springboard for further research and development in this exciting and rapidly evolving field.
Well, as we conclude this part of our deep dive, we encourage our listeners to check out the full paper themselves. There's much more to discover about this technology.
Absolutely. And as the field of LLMs continues to advance, we can expect even more innovative solutions to emerge, tackling the challenges of processing and understanding these vast amounts of information.
It's an incredible time to be following this field.
It's pretty amazing to think that we can process sequences over 1 million tokens now. I mean, that was unimaginable before.
It really shows how fast AI is developing.
The researchers at NVIDIA, they did a great job explaining the benchmarks they used in Appendix B. Really gives you context for their findings.
Yeah, they highlighted those key features of Ruler and Babylon, showing just how complex and diverse those tasks are.
Right. Like, Table 5 breaks down all the different types of reasoning needed in Babylon, and it demonstrates the challenges these models have, especially with those long-range dependencies.
And they talk about how they measured the inference speed, right?
Mhm.
Using that specific hardware setup they outlined in Appendix C.
Yeah, that transparency is so important. It lets people build on their work.
And Table 7 gives all the details on the GPUs and parallel workers used, so you get a clear idea of the computing power needed.
Right. And then in Section 4, the ablation study, they really dig deep into the anchor block and how it affects performance.
It's fascinating stuff.
They tested all sorts of anchor block configurations, like in Table 3, and found that the content of that block is super important for accuracy.
So it's not just about where it is, it's about what's in it.
Exactly. And their experiments with different anchor block sizes, shown in Figure 7, well, they suggest that there's still more to learn about how that mechanism works.
Yeah, like how it contributes to the effectiveness of star attention overall.
It's a really intriguing area for more research.
I agree. The NVIDIA team did a fantastic job documenting their work in this paper. Star attention. Efficient LLM inference over long sequences. It's a must-read for anyone interested in this technology.
Definitely. Their findings have huge implications for LLMs, opening up all sorts of new possibilities that we couldn't even imagine before.
It really feels like star attention takes a big step forward in processing and understanding large amounts of information.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left feeling excited about the future of
Me
LLMs.
too. It's an incredible time to be following this field with all these powerful and sophisticated AI systems emerging.
This deep dive gave us a great look at the cutting edge of LLM research, and hopefully our listeners are inspired to explore this further.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this journey into star attention.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep pushing the boundaries of knowledge.